You know, some stories are so chilling they completely change the world. And that's exactly what we're looking at today. This isn't just about a serial killer who happened to be a doctor. No, this is about how the crimes of one man, Harold Shipman, blew the lid off some massive flaws in a system built on total, unquestioning trust and forced modern medicine to change forever. Just look at that number, 250. That's the estimated number of patients murdered by their own family doctor over 2 decades. These weren't strangers. These were people who trusted him, who welcomed him into their homes and put their lives in his hands. And that's what makes this whole thing so terrifying. Shipman wasn't some monster hiding in the shadows. He was a pillar of the community, a really popular, well-respected doctor. His patients thought he was this caring, wonderful man. They had no idea he was actually one of the most prolific serial killers in history. This question, right from the official government report, really gets to the heart of it. Why did he do it? Honestly, we might never know for sure, but the inquiry was dead set on answering another question, one that's just as important. Exactly. How could a doctor murder hundreds of people, year after year, right under everyone's noses, and go completely undetected? The answer isn't just about one man's evil genius. It's about a system that was so full of holes, he could just walk right through them, again and again. All right, so let's dig into those failures. This wasn't a case of Shipman slipping through one tiny crack. It was more like he was walking through a series of wide-open doors that the system had left unlocked. Okay, so his main trick, it was all about the death certificates. Back then, the process was incredibly flawed. If a patient died and was going to be buried, the only signature needed on the death certificate was from their own doctor. This meant Shipman could literally murder his patients, write natural causes on the form, and sign off on his own crimes. No one else checked it. No second opinion. Nothing. So what was his weapon, and how did he get it? Shipman used lethal injections of diamorphine, which is a very powerful opioid. And the rules for tracking these kinds of drugs in the community, well, they were basically non-existent. He could fake prescriptions, or even just take leftover medicine from the homes of patients who just died. He built up his own lethal stockpile, and nobody was keeping tabs. And you won't believe this, but there were warning signs. People had concerns. The problem was the system for handling them was a total mess. A complaint might go to one place, a concern to another. All this vital information was stuck in different silos, so no one could ever connect the dots. No one could see the horrifying pattern that was following Dr. Shipman wherever he went. And this table really lays it out perfectly. You can draw a straight line from each failure to the solution. The problem of unchecked death certificates, that led directly to independent medical scrutiny. Unaudited drugs, well, now we have new governance and audit trails. Siloed complaints, that forced a whole new way of thinking about regulation. Each failure demanded a specific, powerful fix. But you know, fixing the paperwork is only half the battle. The official inquiry found something deeper, something about the very culture of medicine that allowed a killer like Shipman to operate for so long. See, it wasn't just about broken rules. It was about attitudes that were baked into the system. There was this professional culture that, frankly, protected doctors from being questioned. It often valued loyalty to a colleague more than the safety of a patient. Back in Shipman's day, the whole relationship was based on this idea of doctor paternalism. You know, the doctor knows best, he's in charge, and the patient just passively receives care. It's a hierarchy, and Shipman used that to his absolute advantage. This whole tragedy forced a massive shift towards what we see now, a partnership, where you and your doctor make decisions together. So all these things created the perfect storm. You had the public, who were taught to never question a doctor. You had other professionals who were reluctant to report a colleague. And then you had Shipman himself, working alone in his own practice with very little oversight from his peers. It basically left him to operate inside his own little fortress, totally untouchable. So after Shipman was finally caught and convicted, the shockwaves were immense. The government knew they couldn't just brush this under the rug. They launched a massive public inquiry to figure out how this happened, and more importantly, to make sure nothing like it could ever happen again. And this wasn't some quiet internal review. The Shipman inquiry was a landmark event. It was a huge, public, and incredibly detailed investigation into every single failure, and it led to the biggest shakeup of medical regulation the country had ever seen. And at the absolute core of every single change, every new rule, was this one simple, powerful idea. For the first time, the system's #1 job was crystal clear: protect the patient. Everything else came second. So, how did they close that first massive loophole? They added a whole new layer of security. Now, after a doctor completes a death certificate, it doesn't just get filed away. It goes to an independent medical examiner who looks it over with full access to the patient's records. They can even talk to the family. No doctor can ever again be the sole judge, jury, and executioner. And the changes didn't stop there, not by a long shot. They created special officers to keep tabs on controlled drugs. Doctors now have to go through a tough reevaluation every 5 years to prove they're still fit to practice. And we now have much better systems for monitoring data, like death rates, to spot any worrying patterns early on. When you really step back and look at it all, the impact of this case goes way beyond just a new set of rules. It fundamentally changed the entire philosophy of healthcare. It's a strange thing to say, but Shipman's dark, terrible legacy is actually a much safer world for patients today. His crimes literally dragged the medical profession out of an old culture of secrecy and into a new era of transparency, accountability, and a relentless focus on keeping patients safe. And this quote, it really nails it. It sums up the new mindset perfectly. It's not about the doctor's authority anymore, it's about a partnership with the patient. That cultural earthquake is maybe the most important legacy of all. Look, no system is ever going to be 100% perfect. You can never completely eliminate the risk of a determined criminal. But the reforms that were put in place because of Harold Shipman have redesigned the entire system with one clear purpose: to make sure the patient and their safety always comes first. And that leaves us with one final tough question. You can reform systems, you can write new rules and create new safeguards, but after trust has been so profoundly shattered by the one person you're supposed to be able to trust the most, how do you even begin to rebuild that sacred bond between a doctor and a patient?